Yo, people, we have to talk about something. And this is just a communication thing that I just think is unnecessary. When I say some people, there are people, or these people, I am not talking about everybody walking the face of the earth. I am talking inside the topic that was already set. This is the part that keeps pretending not to understand when it comes to people. This is the people who are either intentionally doing so or are not actively listening. If we are talking about a certain behavior, then these people means the people that are actually showing the actual behavior. That does not mean all men. It does not mean all women. It does not mean every person that is alive. It means the people that are connected to the behavior that we are discussing, that we are already discussing. That should not, this should not be hard. It does not need this much explanation. But for some reason, because this happens online too much now, people love acting like normal speech suddenly just stop working. Shit is broken. You say, some people do this. And here they come.
So you're saying everybody does that?
No, I did not say everybody. I did not imply everybody. You added that because it gave you something easier to argue against. And that is where this conversation starts really getting stupid. And people do this way too often, especially those who want to see themselves as intellectuals, right? Because now I'm not talking about the original point anymore. Now I have to explain basic language to someone who understood the sentence the very first time. People know what some means. People know what there are people means. They know what these people means when a topic has already been established. Once the point gets too close to something that they do not wish to deal with, suddenly they need every word treated like it's a legal document. Now it's
Well, which people exactly?
well, the people showing the behavior.
What behavior?
The behavior we've already been talking about.
Well, I think you need to be more specific.
No. Sometimes you need to stop acting like you're freaking lost. This thing where people are just like, well, you're being too general when the topic is really already specific. There is this difference between needing clarity and pretending that a sentence was unclear because you do not like where it's going to be pointing at. I'm not against being specific. If we are talking about a person, a case, or a claim that needs proof, then yes, be specific. Say what's happening, say who did it, say whatever the hell you need to say that can actually back it up. But every conversation does not need to start with a courtroom level breakdown just for people to understand the basics of words, the basics of communication. If the topic is already clear, general language can still be fair. I'm not understanding this mindset that people use just to make an argument when the parameters were already set. That is how people talk. That is also how people learn to study things in the real world, by the way. People say
Restless being too general.
within a specific topic. Where were you this entire time? And the funny part is that when we look at the world in order to be able to tackle specific needs, specific people, the less we have to start with what? The general. Let me make some points for you. Medical research does not start by pretending every person is unique, that no pattern can ever be noticed. That's not what they do. They study groups, they look for symptoms, they compare responses, then they narrow it down. Not good enough for you? Lawyers. Lawyers do not go to school to learn how to defend one exact person with one exact life story. They learn how to study what? How the law works in general. Then they apply that knowledge to a case that is in front of them. Maybe that's not good there. So, doctors. Doctors go to school to learn general medicine before they ever become a specialist. Same thing for like lawyers. Even a specialist still needs to understand what? The general foundations in order to come up with an actual specific plan for the patient that they're dealing with, right? So, this idea that general framing is automatically wrong makes no sense to me. You cannot talk about a pattern and then jumps with the, well,
Not all, not everybody.
of course not everybody. That was never the claim. This is what is so annoying. A person will act like they corrected you, but all they really did was respond to something that you never said in the first place. If I say, some people use attention to get out of accountability, and then someone says,
So you think everybody who wants attention is bad?
no, this is not what I said. You changed the sentence. You made it bigger than what it actually was. And then you argue against the bigger version that you created because it was easier. This is called a straw man. That's your fallacy. Now, we are not having the actual same conversation that was in place. Now you want me to stop everything I'm doing and explain, no, I said some people. And that's the trick. The original point gets lost because now we are no longer arguing over the same sentence that was actually never said. There is a difference between saying all people are like this and saying there are people who do this. Those are not the same thing. Those are not the same claims. They are not even the same argument. And if someone keeps treating them like they are the same, I do not believe that they are confused every time. And if they are, they really should keep their asses quiet on and offline. I think that they are trying to make a conversation harder than it actually needs to be. Because the original point was, in fact, simple. Some people behave in certain ways, some people use certain tactics, some people play confused when they understand the point was made very clearly and there was no reason to even dignify it with another question, with a follow up. That is not a statement about everybody. That is a statement about the people who actually do these things. And if you are not one of these people, then the statement is not about you. Think about that for a moment. That is another thing that people do. They hear something that does not name them, but they feel touched. Then instead of asking themselves, why? Why? Why does it bother them? They try to make the speaker responsible for their reaction. Now, the issue becomes,
You need to be more specific.
how about no? Maybe you need to ask yourself why a sentence about some people made you want to step forward. Because sometimes people tell on themselves by objecting a little too hard. Not always, since I have to say that. Sometimes a person has a fair question. Sometimes someone really does need you to clarify who or what you are actually talking about. And this is fine. But that is not what I am talking about here. I am talking about people who already know the topic, already understand the behavior, already know what is being said, and still act and behave like the words are impossible to follow. I am talking about the people who need a disclaimer on every word, every sentence, every syllable before they engage with it honestly. Normal people do not talk like this. If we are already talking about a specific topic, then the words being used within it belong to said topic. If we are talking about people who lie and say, these people will lie when it bothers them, guess what we're talking about? People who lie. Shocker. I should not have to stop and say, to be clear, I do not mean honest people. I don't mean babies. I don't mean nurses. I don't mean construction workers. I don't mean your auntie or every person who's on the Western Hemisphere. That's freaking stupid. And people know it's stupid. They act like they don't know because it gives them a way to drag the conversation away from the actual point that it was making. Sometimes the problem is not that the statement was too general. Sometimes the problem is that the statement was too clear. And because it was clear, they had to make it messy. They had to pull the conversation into definitions, side argument, expectations, and labels because dealing with the point directly would mean dealing with the actual behavior, the thing that we should be focusing. And I'm not going to I'm not going to entertain that. It's stupid. I'm just pointing out that I know you guys and I see you guys when you do it. If you need clarity, ask for clarity. But do not pretend some people means all people. Just because you just need something to argue with. Do not pretend there are people means everybody because the actual point made you feel uncomfortable. And do not act like being hyper specific automatically makes you honest because it does not. Sometimes specificity is needed. Sometimes it's a stalling tactic. Sometimes you got to hear all the sums that I have to use for you. Sometimes it's just a way to keep conversation from actually landing where it was never supposed to land. And sometimes you're actually stopping the point from landing for the people that need to hear it because it needs to land there. You're taking away from the other people because you need to make it about yourself. Another point of attention. See, that is where a lot of these conversations go wrong because it doesn't become about the conversation, it becomes all about your narrow ass. People are still always listening to understand, but there are also plenty of people who are listening not to understand because they're there to try to argue. They are listening for the one word that they can grab, that they twist, that they can turn a whole new conversation into a different argument or a different direction. Then they wonder why the conversation never gets anywhere. And that was rather the point. It doesn't get anywhere because they never actually stayed on the point to begin with. So when I use general language, which is weird because I'm not, but when I use general language inside an already established topic with already with inside a established framework, I am not going to apologize for that. If the topic is clear and the behavior is clear, then the people being discussed are the people connected to said behavior. That is how normal speech works. And if someone keeps pretending they can't understand that, then at some point, I'm going to stop treating it like it's confusion. Because sometimes, I got to do a count on how many times I did sometimes they understand exactly what was said. They just don't want to answer it. If you notice it, call it out when you see it.